Hey guys, what's going on? Back again with another Cold War Zombies video. And this is going to be kind of another one of those like friendly reminders or kind of almost like ripping off a band-aid. Just giving you guys some information that you guys might not be aware of or not familiar with, depending how new you are to the zombie storyline or Treyarch Zombies or Call of Duty Zombies as a whole. You might not be familiar like how they write a story, or if you don't watch too many TV shows or watch too many movies, you might not be aware of the writing or the narrative that goes on in a lot of those things. And this is going to kind of serve, again, as a reminder to that and almost like a band-aid, like I said, where it's going to be the tough love, bitter truth about a lot of things. So as you guys know, we're in the middle of Cold War, coming towards the end to the final survival map, maybe DLC4, and we're still trying to figure out who the accursed one, the Forsaken One, is. In the Dark Ether, we know that the Ether universe got collapsed, and now it's got brought into the Dark Ether, and we're trying to figure out what's going on in Dark Ether. We really haven't seen too much of the Dark Ether, and Vanguard Zombies is going to be a prequel to all that. So again, this is going to remind people how stories are written and how narrative teams and department write stories. And I'm going to say, again, this is kind of like the tough love part where I don't want to put the blame on Blundell, but since he was the director, and I've seen people mention this recently, kind of doing like a recap for Cold War, what they think of the zombies for Cold War. And I still have to do my own part and make my own video about what I think about the narrative story or Cold War zombies in a whole, like my overall view or maybe recap of it, like I said. So again, I'm trying to let people know that when stories are written, and again, we're trying to figure out who the Forsaken One is. There's a couple theories going around. But again, this is going to remind you that when World at War came out in 2008, so we're in 2021, that's already 13 years from now. In the past, in 2008, we got a map called Shinonuma, which code name I guess was the Swamp for the devs, and I guess maybe in the storyline for 935 was called Swamp. But the map we know it as is Shinonuma. So 2008 was when World at War came out. I think either in 2009 about that we got Swamp. And within Swamp Shinonuma, there was an Easter egg for the map, and it had a telephone. You press X on it, and it played a short audio clip. And that was when we first heard of the Shadow Man, or who were the Shadow Man, when theories started evolving into who that voice was. At the time, it probably was just Treyarch saying, hey, we're just going to put a scary voice in there. And it did maybe, I think, link into some of the other future stuff. But again, so in like 2008, 2009, we got our first Easter egg for the Shadow Man, or what would become the Shadow Man. So my whole point of this is to point out to people that it wouldn't be until another 7 years till we finally got the conclusion of who the Shadow Man is, and bringing it back again to where we are in Cold War. We're in 2021, and we are just finding out about the Forsaken One in the Dark Ether. And again, I said this goes back to kind of maybe Jason Blundell. I want to put the blame on him, but he was the director at the time. Jason Blundell wanted to wrap up the Ether story as fast as possible because he wanted to start his Chaos story. And that might be the, I don't want to say Achilles heel, but the downfall of where we're at right now, where people want a quick conclusion to everything because that's the way the team Treyarch did it in Black Ops 3, and that's why Black Ops 3 is perceived as everyone's favorite zombie storyline, because you got that instant gratification of like, all right, here's the answer. And then again, something that I already said publicly I didn't like is he was going on big channels and giving away a lot of answers or hints and stuff like that. And that's why we are, and the saying goes, you have to kind of sleep in the bed that you make, or whatever it's called. But basically, we're now forced, or not really forced, but we're now dealing with the ramifications of what Jason Blundell and what happened in Black Ops 3, where it's like, let's give all the answers and wrap up. And it happened also again in Black Ops 4 when they wanted to wrap up the Ether story. They gave a lot of answers really quickly. But again, if you go back to World at War in 2008 and you keep flash forwarding, again, this is that Easter egg. It was called Dead Air. You press X on it, you got an achievement for it. And then you heard the voice of, at the time, people don't know who it was. It might have just been a scary voice, but people kind of linked it to this figure called the Shadow Man, and he's been in a lot of stories in the Twilight Zone, and it's kind of the same thing where he attacks kids in their sleep or kidnaps them in their sleep. Wears the black hat, and looks like a shadow, comes through the window, and I guess that's why in the Revelations they tell Maxis tells Samantha, make sure you shut the window, or I guess in the or she does in the Revelations trailer, but then also in Origins and cutscene, because the Shadow Man's gonna come and kidnap you and stuff like that. And that was the end of Black Ops 2 before the prequel basically to Black Ops 3, where we finally see the reveal of the Shadow Man. So again, you think of like 2008. World at War, 7 years or 8 years later, we would finally find out who the Shadow Man is. So the whole purpose of this, again, and that's the Shadow Man there in his human form, and then you get the Apothicon form. But keep in mind, again, this is going to be like tough love, and people don't want to hear this. People want instant gratification. Keep in mind that it might not be till another 8 years from now that we might find out who the Forsaken One is, who the Accursed One is, because a lot of these studios, movie studios, video game studios, and authors, and people on narrative teams, you need to kind of draw some suspense, get the reader, the audience involved emotionally into the characters and the storyline that's coming. You can't, because that's the thing where, like, and I know people have mentioned this about the zombies community, that like people want to be attached to certain characters and certain crews, but that's not something that happens in one game. This happens over several games, and the story, or the same thing with the story, people want to be emotionally involved with the story or attached to the story, but that's never going to happen in a couple months, in one game, in 1 year. It's going to have to take a couple of years to people to be emotionally attached to some of the characters. So again, I know this is kind of like a big roundabout way, and I'm still trying to like sugarcoat it so people don't get too upset, but the long and short of it is, it might be a lot of years from now, like maybe 5 or 7 years before we see or find out who the Forsaken One is, or was in the Dark Ether. I mean, like, going again or comparing it to movies, you might not figure that out for like a long time, and stuff like that. Or even like in movies, you might just see a glimpse of them. I know Godzilla is kind of a little bit notorious for that, a little bit, where you see Godzilla towards the end of the movie for like maybe 5 or 10 minutes, I guess maybe for budget reasons and suspense and stuff like that. So keep all that in mind, that again, for the third time, like, World at War came out in 2008. The next map, I believe, was Verrückt, Shinonuma, and then the final one was Doris. And then we were supposed to get Kino, but then Kino got pushed into Black Ops 1. So if you think about Shinonuma in 2008, they never really talked or mentioned anything about the Shadow Man in Black Ops 1 zombies and Black Ops 2 zombies. It was just a storyline that they picked up in. I mean, they did have some, and I probably should include that, some figures, I guess, or some shadows in the loading screen, and that's what also fed into the Shadow Man theory. But it wouldn't be again until 7 years later, 8 years later, that we get it in Black Ops 3 in a face reveal. Even with Monty, you think about the all the stuff that Monty helped us with in World at War, and it would be another 8 years before we finally get a face reveal for Dr. Monty, the Shadow Man, um, even Maxis. I don't think you saw Maxis till Origins, if I'm not mistaken. So a lot of these characters that we hear about in radios, think about if Zykov is a real person, he might actually be the Forsaken One tricking us. Also, you think about Samantha. You didn't get to see her until Moon, the Moon Easter egg. So that was again another like um, couple years, I guess, like 2 years maybe. They're from maybe 2011 or something like that, or 2010. You would see Samantha. So a lot of these characters, you never saw. So people are kind of like wanting to know who the Accursed One is or who the Forsaken One is. And I know a lot of them might be triggered if we don't get to see that at the end of Cold War, but at the same time, again, I want to mention it's going to be like a band-aid that, like, hey, don't be surprised if we don't see the Forsaken One for a long time from now, drawing suspense, and especially with COVID-19 times that, like, studios are spread pretty thin, so they have to kind of stretch out even more some of these storylines to have content for all the games that are coming down the road, and especially that all the stories are kind of intertwining now, and they all kind of have to make sense. Anyways, I hope that explained everything to you guys, and that, be careful what you're wishing for, that you might not get it for a long time from now. Anyways, I'll see you guys later.